Good. Good day, everyone. My name is Lucas Puttkammer. I'm in SKG Services Europe. I'm a functional architect here, and I will do a presentation today about the BankFabric library formats and how we can do a transition for our customers to get this library formats in place instead of standard old D365 source code in regards to the formats. All right. If you have any questions on the way, I will do it like in a small sessions. So in the first place, I will do a very short PowerPoint presentation. Then we go through the release notes and then we'll do we'll do the review of the user guide, how to continue, and at the end we'll do more or less the exercise on the system as such. So in between, please raise your hands on feel free to speak and ask questions in case of any. Okay, I will start sharing. Right, so BankFabric library formats. The BankFabric library, it's simply part of the BankFabric solution, and probably you have heard about that one already. So the old way, that's our old and previous customers had is to use a file hub to get the communication with the bank, to process the files and so on. The new way is something what we call the BankFabric. This is an Azure-based service as such, and the BankFabric library is simply a part of that BankFabric system, where we store all of the format information as such, a convertible format version, so D365 data can be transferred into a specific file. And one thing to mention at the very beginning is quite important. BankFabric solution is not the same, and we'll not discuss that one today. We will discuss how we can convert current solutions that our customers have using the file hub server, using the BankFabric library formats. So not how to use the BankFabric, but how to use BankFabric library formats on the file hub. So the BFL BankFabric library are the DLLs. DLLs is this dynamic link library type of a file, which simply transforms the data to a format, to a file, what can be communicated with the bank and sent to them. Why we have introduced that one? And simply, the BankFabric, that's the tool that we that is for the future development by SKG, and that one, and that's why that is on the focus, let's say, to develop that one and work on that kind of a solution, then keep upgrading the older type of communications as such. And why to switch to bank library formats? One of the biggest advantages is simply we do not need to do a code compilation if we have any kind of a new format to be delivered or any kind of a hotfix. So this is a DLL file that we will place on our file hub on a given folder, and if we have a hotfix, we will just replace the old file with the new one. So there is no need to plan a release on D365 to the compilation and not plan this whole environment deployment as such. Some of you probably experienced as well then when during the project we are changing the Treasury Automation Suite version to a newer version, and some of the new formats or hotfixes to the formats has been delivered to the older version. We'll need to port those hotfixes to a newer version if those were not included in the new version itself. So that one is as well no longer needed, because we will keep the format version on the file hub as a separate file. The other advantage as well is when we upgrade into a new task version, and when we using those D365 codes. So when we upgrade into a new version, all the formats being updated as well with all the hot fixes that were included into that version to that specific format. What that means simply that the format could change for you slightly, and then for the customer as such, and then we may need to retest it and so on. When using the DLL files, we are simply selecting which version of the file we are using and why, and we don't need to upgrade to a newer one if we don't want. Right, DLL, yes, it's a direct link library. Takes the task data a similar way and transform the file, transform the data into a specific format file that later on we communicate into and send into the bank itself. It's available for those 4 modules here: APFT, direct debit, bank to bank, and customer reimbursement. So the BankFabric itself is available, of course, for other modules, but the BankFabric library formats that we're discussing today is available for those 4 types of the outbound files. The library itself is a website. I will give you a link as well to that one, and then I will show you how to look at it, and then you would be able. I mean, we have 2 ways. We can create you as a users, so you would be able to download those files, those versions on your own, and probably that would be preferable option for everyone. But of course, if you don't want to have that one, you can always contact us, and we will just download the version and send the specific file to you. Yeah, currently we have already like 750 banks on those BFL formats with that many methods of payments, and that is of course growing all the time. And now, yeah, BFL formats can be used by all task customers, both that are on File Hub or those that are on the BankFabric. The only thing is that if you are using the File Hub, you need to be on this version 11.4 or greater, and your File Hub supposed to be upgraded to at least version 3.01. The whole story about handling those BFL files is just to download them from the library and then copy them into this specific folder that we are able to see here. File Hub being BankFabric library. For the BankFabric customers, yeah, those customers needs to be on 11.4 because then the BankFabric solution has been introduced as well. And then you simply selecting on the BankFabric itself which format, which version you are using. Okay. How does it work? All in all, if we have that's about the BFL formats with the File Hub itself. So yeah, that is our D365 instance. When we have our task installed and so on, the format code in that case will be no longer in task. The format code would be moved to the File Hub as this DLL file. The BankFabric library part, there is no direct connection here. It's a manual download and manual copy to the File Hub of this specific format. And then File Hub is using the already existing connections that we already have for our customers, and that communicates to the bank the same way as it was done before. So the whole thing is just about where the code about the format is stored, but at the very end, that's the same thing will happen within the communication. So no changes here. And once again, customers needs to be on version 11.4 or greater with the file hub 3.01 or greater. Yes, and when using the BFL format with the BankFabric, so here when we have the BankFabric library, that is like a direct connection. In this case, we do select on the BankFabric simply which version, which format we're going to use, activating that one, and then yeah, the transfer of the file is happening a similar way as with FileHub. Okay. So here is a very quick slide of simply how the BankFabric library does look. I will show that one in a live version as well in a moment. But in general, we can see that we go into the library web page. So as I said, we can have you created as users, so you would be able to download on your own, or we can download the file and send those to you. So you just simply download that file, then you place in that file in this, in this file hub bin BankFabric library folder on your file hub. And then the extra step is you need to go back to the Treasury automations with file formats, and you need to change the formats to the BankFabric library formats. I will show that in a moment as well. If we're talking about the BankFabric setup itself, then on the format section, we have simply a list of formats available. We just activate in a specific format, adding the specific format, on the BankFabric, and then we need to go to the Treasury automations with file formats as well, just to get it activated there as same way as with the file hub. Okay, any questions so far? So let's continue to the next part. So now I will show you a very quick, where is this one here? So share screen. Share. Right, so we are on the SK Global Software release note webpage. So I believe you probably know that one, because we just given all the release notes all the time on that level. So one of those announcement that has been done is available here. You can learn more about that one in this specific link, and here is some kind of like FNQ to what is the BankFabric library format, how you can do it, and then what is actually needed, and so on. So yeah, that's something that's something you can share with the customers as well if needed, and so on. But it's more for a reference. Okay, and the next one. And the next one is the user guide. So let me just share that one as well. All right. Okay, so I will share that document, of course, with you if it's not already done. In general, this is like a guide how we can handle the BFL transition, the BFL formats transition. You can see several pieces of an information here. It's like an overview, like it's simply a description what has been happening, when the code was stored, and so on, with the new process, with the BFL, with the DLL files, what is happening, and so on. Some kind of an announcement. So again, the same thing that we have said about the versions below. Here is the important date. So from March 2024, those 4 outbound file formats will be available only on the BFL formats. So simply said, if someone will need any kind of a hotfix, or if someone will need a new version of the file or a new method of payment, if bank will change something in the meantime, we will be no longer building the code in the D365 code version. It will be only delivered as those BFL formats. One extra thing maybe worth to mention as well, if your customers considering, if our customers considering as well changing to BankFabric in a later stage, changing to BFL to using the BFL formats is an option as well, and simply a recommended solution as well, because yeah, when you will change to to BankFabric, you will need to use the bank library formats anyway. So you can activate those right now still when using FileHub, so you will have part of the testing done. Because yeah, we will need to do some kind of a testing, compare if the files are okay, and so on. So I will show you the extra tool that has been developed for that one as well in a later part of the process. Yes, Maya?
Yeah, I was wondering what happens if a company has some specific setup on file formats, or if they have some format maybe that's not included in the BankFabric library. Will their setup when going to BankFabric library then be overwritten, and will we need to review all of that again with every release or when changing the formats?
So by a specific requirement, that really depends what you mean. If that was part of the format already, then that kind of a format will be moved to the BankFabric library as well, unless you mean that there was some kind of customer specific things.
Yeah, it could be just a setup on the file format. So maybe a field is not required while it came in as a required field. And then in some cases, I know that some customers had specific development for a certain format, for example, done. And I don't know if that's all included then in the BankFabric library, or if it's something that, well, we need to take care of.
Yeah, it's always good to double check if that's the case. So in general, the formats that we deliver and are available in D365 as well as in the BankFabric library are the public formats. So in a sense, we don't develop something very specific to a customer, because that is a public format that other customers will use as well. So we always looking for a solution to a requirement which can be simply added on top of what we have, that will not break anything for other customers. So in theory, it shouldn't be the case that we'll have developed something very specific for a customer that hasn't been part of the generic public format. But yeah, I don't know history of all of those. So yeah, in theory, it shouldn't happen like that. But yeah, if you know something like that, then of course it's good to mention that one and double check before we start the transition. And in regards to the parameters of the formats and validation rules and so on. So if yeah, that's a good question. So in case if we will be using the same format version, so we'll have a chance to when changing to the BankFabric library format, so we'll have a chance to simply take the same version of the file that we have had already in our D365 instance, and then when we do a refresh, yeah, then it's supposed to keep the changes that we have done as well. So if we have manually overwritten user overwritten validation rules, that's supposed to keep those changes as well. But yes, as always, let's double check that one.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Next one. Yes, existing customers, yeah, upgrade to 11.4. That's all fine. Here is nice FAQ session of the document as well. Yeah, describing what's the difference. So we simply discussed that one. Why should I want to use the BankFabric library formats? Yeah, so simply it will, yeah, if you upgrade, that's one of the things I said. If you upgrade to a task version, you are able to keep the format version of your selection. So you can upgrade to a new one. So then you would be able, most likely you will need to do some kind of a testing just to double check if nothing has changed on the master data level and then so on. But you can keep the version that you have been using before without changing or need of upgrading that one. How much does it cost? So that's of course an important information. So switching to BFL formats, there's no fees and then no extra charge in that one. BankFabric itself, it's a different story. So I will not say much about that one, but in general, I believe there is an extra cost on using BankFabric itself. Really depends on what license bundle the customers are. But having the BFL formats, converting to BFL formats, that's no extra cost as such, except of those few hours of let's say, checking, testing, and getting the files into the DLL files into the file hub. Right, what's the process? So we'll have the description down below. And yes, so let's jump to those instructions, how we can do that conversion and so on. So it's more detailed steps. Yeah, I will show that in a majority of those steps I would be able to show in a moment. Majority because I don't have access actually to any of the file hubs right now. Yeah, so in the first step, you simply go to the BankFabric library, and as I said, either you go and download the file yourself when you get the access, or you ask someone from SKG to get it downloaded and delivered to you. The next step would be on the VM machine, on the file hub server machine, place this DLL file onto this specific folder here behind the SKG file hub folder. Depends on which file hub version you are. Of course, there will be 3.01, 3.03, 5, 6, and so on. And you just place it like that. I believe for the file hub version 3.01 in the very first installation, that folder, BankFabric library, was missing. So if you have that version, then you will need to create that folder manually, but the rest will stay unchanged. When you would like to upgrade to a newer version, then you simply replace the file with the newer version, with the newest version, and then delete the file with the older version. It's supposed to, of course, it's supposed to take the latest one anyway. But yeah, just as a best practice is to just keep one file per format in this BankFabric library folder. That was step 2. And then step 3, in the file format section, APFT file format section, we have introduced in this version 11.4 format group code source. So either we have a BankFabric here, BankFabric library, or D365 as a source code. When we will drop the files in this folder here, and we will change the format group source code to BankFabric library, then that kind of an action of refreshing, adding new formats will happen. If the file for the given format will not be there, we'll receive the error message simply that DLL file for that format is not in place on that file hub that is connected to it. Okay. Yes, and this is like how to add the formats using BankFabric itself, but that's not for today. Okay. Any questions? If not, let's jump to the BankFabric library itself and how to handle that in the system. So just give me a small second here. Okay, so BankFabric library. This is simply a link where you log in using your standard credentials. We have two ways of viewing the formats. So we have a version of view which we call a bank view. So then when we have a bank view, we don't have any kind of a filter section here. But as an example, if I would like to check the formats for a bank called Rabobank, I would just need to go to a specific, to that place I'm finding Rabobank as an example. Then you are able to see, but that in Rabobank we do have two format groups. One is for Rabo XML, so that's our typical AP EFT format, and Rabobank XML AR, that means this is a direct debit format. When we open that one, we are able to see a single version here available for download. So when I download that one, and this is like quite important part, DLL files are not recognized as a secure file, so that's why we have this extra step here that we will need to keep that one and say again keep anyway. So then simply our file is stored on the downloaded folder. From there we will need to take it to our file hub on this specific location. And as an example, another example, let's take SEB. And let's take the outbound for AP outbound formats. Then you can see multiple versions already on that one. So here you have some kind of a description what has been actually added to that specific version. And then you are able to download a specific version you want. So in the first place, when we will be doing the transition, my recommendation would be to use the exactly same version as the customers have currently, and I will show you why in a moment, because we would be able to do some kind of a comparison of those files. So less testing in that case. Okay. And that works exactly the same way. So step number 2 is to drop those files on the file hub. And as I said, unfortunately, I don't have access to any kind of a file hub right now. So I will skip that process, but this is really simple copy-paste action. The extra thing I would like to mention here is that we are able to change a view to, well, too much clicking, to a version view instead of the bank view. So then is, let's say, maybe a bit less readable, but we're looking for a specific format, and we do have a filtering section. So we can type Rabo again. So I have that one, show this one, and for Rabo we have again those two formats here, and then we can see which kind of payment specifications are inside of those files as well. And then simply again, when I hit download, so that's the same version here all the way through. So I will get the same file, the same type of file that I can download right now. Okay. So that's the two possibilities we may have. All right. So when that is done, I just need to close. Oh, maybe I can move that one, and then when that is done, we will need to go to not that one, just a second. This one, no, that one. So in that case, when we drop the files in the file hub server, we need to go to our APFT file formats, if that of course relates to APFT. So in this particular case, I will just look for the one I have, that's the Rabobank. And then you can see this format group source code. Right now it's selected to BankFabric library, but in the first place it will be the D365 source code, and we'll get that kind of an operation happening in the background. So let me just change it back to BankFabric library, and that's the thing that we'll need to do. In theory, nothing is happening in the background. So if we have the fields here, if we have that was the question what Maya had. If we have those extra validation rules on that one, that with this source code change, in theory, nothing is being updated on that level. So it's just where to look at the code for those specific file formats. So when we have that one, in theory, when we have that one completed, in theory, we done and ready, and then the new files will be generated with the BankFabric library formats instead of the D365 source code. And they will follow the same path, the same logic, and so on. Now, maybe few practicalities as well. So I said we have a chance to simply we'll need to some kind of a test it if the files are the same and so on. And then in one of those versions before, we have actually introduced the this one. I have it here, I believe. No, on that one. We have introduced an extra piece that will allow us to compare existing files with the files that would be generated using the BankFabric library files. To be able to enable that tool, we'll need to go to electronic funds transfer. And then we have introduced this parameter here, BFA file compare. So if we say that one as a yes, we would be able to go to our create and send APFT records. So here is where we store our files and information about the file. And then we have this option BFI file compare available. So again, a thing worth to mention here, if we will apply a BFL file format with a version that is different to the one that we actually have had before, that BFL comparison will not work. Because we are able only to compare the files that are on the same version. So just to be sure, we need to simply get it done. So we simply select and download the format that has the same version as we've been using before. When we hit that one, we'll get the prompt message. Simply depends on the code type you have and so on. And you would be able to see several things like that. So the existing file, so we are comparing the existing file that has been created by our accountants, by the customer accountants before. And then we generating a new file, which would be stored in the CMP, which is a compare folder. And it is generated based on the exactly same data as the first file. And then you can see down below how the first file does look and how the new file does look. And on the top part of the file differences section, you would be able to see what are the actual differences between the files. And here, that's the one that you actually are expecting to see, because this is a create date time. So the original file was created on March 15. This file, when we hit the compare button, was created today. So that's the only create date time section where we see a difference between the files. Yes, Maya. Maya, I see you have a question.
Sorry, I was muted. Yeah, I'm just wondering if the compare is also possible in test environment, if you've copied the environment from production, or if it is just possible to do it in an environment where the file was generated originally.
We will need to, yeah, good question. We'll need to copy, because we will refer to the file itself. So in that case, we'll need to copy the file hub section as well. So if we copy the production environment to a test environment, we'll need to copy the file hub folder structure to have the files, because we reading the files.
Yeah. Okay.
So you would be able to, let's say, copy paste the file hub structure as well with the file. So the link is there, and if the link is there, then simply we will have it here.
Okay, but if we want to upgrade, for example, at the same time, then a possibility in test environment would be to first generate a couple of files with the old way, yes, and then basically install the BFL and try again to do the comparison.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
Yes, and I think that's more or less it. We can maybe the extra few things. So yeah, you are able to when you're using the same format across multiple legal entities, when you switch to use BankFabric library, that would be affecting all legal entities that using that format. So it's not legal entity specific. It's a global approach in that case. But you can keep only a single format using the BFL in the first place, and leave the D365 source code on other formats. So that's kind of a technicalities here. Yes, the other thing is as well that we actually talking about 4 types of outbound files. So we do have APFT, we do have direct debits, customer reimbursement, and bank to bank. So each of those has its own section, of course. on the file formats part. And then each of those, of course, will have its own files in the BankFabric library. So yeah, if we can switch to the previous version, probably that would be easier to follow. Where's this Rabo one? Right. Then on the BankFabric library as well, would be able to see which one is for AP, DD, B2B, and CR as such. Of course, we have the formats converted to BFL based on that what we have created before. So if that Rabo, as an example, was never part of the B2B or CR, then simply we don't have them yet. If customers will wish to get them created, we will just do it the same way as usual. All right. Any questions? Nice. So I will stop sharing right now. I will stop the recording as well. I will share, maybe let me show you that small piece. So probably that would be the easiest one. Is this Zoom in here? Share screen and this one. So I have a very simple Word document created like BankFabric library transition how to. So we do have the link to the BankFabric library itself. We do have a link to this release note, and we have this guide instructions included inside. So yeah, we will share that one with you. So you will have all the three pieces in one place here.